CCG. And alongside me, who will be presenting the Sunflower programme, is Vicky Baker, who is an occupational therapist from North Tees Foundation Trust. And we've got Joanne Rountree from South Tees Foundation Trust as well. And I think we're presenting alongside another team, aren't we? Is that right?
Yes. Hello. Hi, I'm Nadine, Stacey, an occupational therapist from Buckinghamshire, working in SEN schools.
And I'm Aoife Garvey, I'm an OT as well, and I work with Nadine in Buckinghamshire.
Lovely stuff. Kate, I don't know if there's a plan as to who goes first or who doesn't, or do we just crack on?
Aoife's got the slides up there, so it's probably easiest if they start off, and then they can share your slides if you prefer, if you let them know when to move them on.
Lovely, great.
Okay.
Great. So hopefully that should be sharing. Okay.
Okay, so thank you for attending our workshop called Embedding a Sensory Approach in SEN Schools. It's not just a fidget toy. My name is Nadine Stacey. I'm a senior occupational therapist and I hold a postgraduate certificate in sensory integration.
My name is Aoife Garvey. I'm a paediatric occupational therapist and I'm currently studying for my postgraduate cert in sensory integration. So Nadine and I work for the PACE Centre, and PACE is a charity that provides first-class education, therapy and support for children aged 0 to 18 with neurodisabilities such as cerebral palsy and developmental delay, and also provides support and guidance for their families. Within this, we're contracted out into the Vale Federation within Aylesbury, and within the Federation you have Booker Park School, which is a large primary special school of 220 pupils with a diversity of complex needs, including profound and multiple, severe and moderate learning difficulties, and almost half of the pupils also have an additional diagnosis of autism spectrum disorders. Within the Vale Federation, we also have Stocklake Park School, and this is a secondary school that provides educational provision for students with complex learning difficulties from 11 to 19 years of age with a higher therapeutic need, and there's approximately 90 students here. So as a team, we are made up of 7 OTs and we have 2 OT assistants, and we're a mixture of part and full-time. We have 2 SI4 advanced therapists and we have 1 postgraduate diploma in SI therapist as well. So this is a summary of the provision we provide at Booker Park School and Stocklake Park. And for our presentation today, we're going to focus mainly on the regulation, attention and emotional well-being aspect, as well as the sensory processing aspect. So our objectives for today's presentation is to discuss the guiding principles and frameworks used within the Vale Federation, to give some practical examples on how we embed a sensory approach, and also to provide you with our process and tips for success to embedding this approach.
So it's useful for us to consider what sensation does for us. Some of the theory behind what we're going to talk about really is a guiding principle for the service that we embed within the school. So sensation helps to protect us, to regulate us, and it helps us to discriminate. From a protection point of view, it keeps us safe. We know if something's too hot, too cold, too spiky. We know if there's a noise that we need to alert ourselves to, such as a fire alarm or maybe somebody screaming. We can smell if something's burning. We can taste if something doesn't taste right. So all of these sensations help to protect us, that we pick up and integrate into our central nervous system. It helps us to discriminate, so we know we can attach a meaning to what we see. Is that box really heavy? Even though it's big, we can pick it up, use our receptors to decide actually what are the sensory qualities of what we're seeing. And additionally, sensation helps us to regulate. It helps us to adjust our level of alertness throughout the day. Maybe at this point in the afternoon, people have had to have a movement break, or maybe people are needing to chew the end of their pencil, or maybe eat food. So it helps us to regulate our arousal level to the point it needs to be for the activity that we're doing. We also consider the 8 sensory systems. And we all know about the 5 that were taught at school, but it's also really useful to educate and be mindful of the vestibular sense, the proprioceptive sense, and the interoception sense, and that's our sense of movement and position and gravity. From a proprioceptive sense, it's our joints and muscles telling us about where our body is, how much force and pressure we need to use. And the interoception helps us to understand those internal feelings. Are we hungry? Are we thirsty? And attach meaning to them. So we really consider the senses as our foundation. So if we can't register, interpret, and integrate our 8 sensory systems, we can't regulate. If we're not regulated, we're not at that correct arousal level to be able to access learning. And this hierarchical model just shows that really our sensory systems need to be considered as a foundation. So we also consider sensory modulation, and this is our nervous system's ability to register and integrate sensory input and then conduct an appropriate response. So we have students that under-respond, students that over-respond, and students that are sensory seekers, and we really need to plan our service around this knowledge and these needs. For the under-responsive child, they may not notice inputs from one or more of the sensory systems, and they may be very, very passive. Sometimes these students are classed as the daydreamers, those that aren't motivated to do and engage in learning. We have the sensory seekers that crave excessive stimulation. They typically don't sit still, they're tapping, they're chewing, they're on the go. And we have our sensory over-responders who really struggle to manage those daily sensations. Things are too bright, too busy, too loud, too noisy, too smelly. And for these children, they can quite often shut down or maybe lose control or be passive or aggressive. So we use our sensory detective skills to try and work out what's really going on for our students. We also consider our levels of arousal. We all typically will function more towards one level of arousal than another. We all know those people that have got lots of energy and they're the tiggers in the world. And there are those that really don't really respond to all the sensations. They're quite an under-responder. That's our eel that we can see at the bottom. Or those of us that stay generally quite well regulated. That's our Winnie the Pooh. But actually, sensory events throughout the day can really change our level of arousal. So the little triangles at the bottom just show that. It may be the journey into school is actually quite hard for some of our students, or maybe after playtime, or the point when they get home is actually when they lose control. So it's just to be mindful that actually we need to consider arousal throughout the school day.
So one of the first frameworks that's used across the Federation is the zones of regulation, and it's a cognitive behavioural approach used to categorise all the different ways we feel and all the different states of alertness into 4 different coloured zones. So for example, if you're sad, you're in the blue zone, happy in the green zone, silly in the yellow zone, or angry in the red zone. And it's a framework that allows students to be more aware of and independent in controlling their emotions and impulses, to manage their sensory needs, and to improve their ability to problem solve conflicts. And displays like you can see in the picture are within all classrooms within the Vale Federation. So it allows students the opportunity to, as we say, check in with their emotions and let their peers and other adults within the class know exactly how they're feeling. Another framework that we use is the Certs Framework, and it stands for Social Communication, Emotional Regulation and Transactional Supports. And it's a research-based educational approach, a multidisciplinary framework, and it directly addresses the core challenges faced by students with autism spectrum disorder. So as an MDT, that's the teacher, the OT and the speech and language therapist, we meet and we set goals similar to what you can see on the screen. So they're to do with the regulation side of the Certs Framework. So taking all of those theories and frameworks into account, we're just going to discuss some of the practical examples we use within the Federation to embed this sensory approach. So this is a list of them, but we're going to go through each of them now. So the first thing we have within the school is specialist sensory equipment. So As a team, we assess equipment in a real cost-effective manner. So we compare between sensory websites or maybe other general retailers for equipment, for example, weighted blankets, weighted backpacks, ear defenders, swings, and we ensure that all the equipment is safe and meets its specific criteria before advising staff and families about the equipment. Each piece of equipment is individualised to the child's needs, and we'll discuss how we make it individualised later on. So it's not a blanket statement, blanket provision. We really make sure that each equipment is for a specific child. And we provide info for staff and regularly review its effectiveness and the condition of the equipment. So as you can see, these are just examples we have within the classroom. Again, we have a Chewy ready for a student to take. We've got a choice board that they can choose what equipment they might need. We have options of light, medium or heavy weighted backpacks, or even just a simple sensory toolbox within a classroom. And in this you'll have items such as body socks, ear defenders, weighted vests, weighted blankets, and they're just easily accessible for the children within the school. So we also really considered the classroom environment, and we ensured that the sensory system, so the visual system and the auditory system, aren't being overwhelmed throughout the day. So we recommend cosy corners within the classroom. We have considered and trialled safe space companies. However, we found that the financial cost as well as the need for sufficient space within the classroom is quite difficult. So we just use everyday pieces of equipment you might find within the classroom and make spaces similar to what you can see within the photos. We also advise on a number of sensory seating options. So we have chairs that rock, we have chairs that you can bounce on, we have chairs that may offer a lower centre of gravity for those children who may be gravitationally insecure. But some options can be as simple as having a standard classroom chair with a weighted blanket on a child's lap to provide proprioceptive and deep tactile input. We also assist staff in setting up sensory circuits. These can be within the classroom or within kind of larger spaces within the school. And these help to alert or calm the sensory systems. And they can also be used as movement breaks throughout the day. We kind of advise that they should address a number of sensory systems and kind of those everyday gross motor skills. So things like the vestibular system, the tactile system, and kind of have activities that challenge your motor coordination and your praxis skills. As I said, each child would have individual sensory tools. So we do this through observation. We kind of compile a sensory profile and also sensory exploration sessions, and these help to provide the students with their own individual toolboxes of resources and strategies. So you can see, for example, in the pictures here, we've got one of the teachers. She has a choice board that's specific to that child and that they can choose which sensory strategy they may need. The two images on the right, so for example, a child can demonstrate that I'm in the yellow zone, I need a fidget toy, or an adult can model to them that you are in the blue zone, you need to have a bounce on the peanut. And also we kind of ensure that these strategies are known to all adults working within the classroom. So the middle photo at the bottom just shows a display we have up. So if you have an adult from another classroom working in a different class for the day, they know exactly what those children need throughout the day. We also have a specialist swing room, and this can be used to assist in regulating children throughout the day. So for example, transition time can be quite difficult. So transitioning from drop off into the classroom or transitioning from the classroom to lunchtime. So this space can be used for regulating their sensory needs. And it's also where our SI trained therapists can carry out SI therapy. So as I said, we use a number of different sensory assessments to inform our practice. We use general questionnaires that are sent home to families. We compile sensory profiles from both the parents and teachers, or we do general sensory exploration sessions with the children. And these help us to make sure that all our provision is individualised for the children. And another aspect that we have incorporated within the school is yoga, and this is usually done after playtime, after lunch, when the children are coming back inside and getting ready to learn for the afternoon. And this helps to regulate them as well as working on their motor coordination skills as well. And actually, some of our staff have gone on and completed training specifically for children with autism and yoga.
So one aspect that we consider quite carefully is the training that needs to go alongside this model of practice. So all staff have a half-day training as part of their staff induction, and then there are regular refreshers in place to top that up. We deliver a separate zones of regulation training, so staff really understand the theory behind the curriculum, what zone, which emotions relate to what zone, how we then explore the sensory strategies and develop independence in students choosing their own strategy based on their need. All staff have a Certs training. This is normally led by an ASD lead with MDT input, so we can really bring out the regulation side of Certs within this. And we also deliver targeted training specific to a child's sensory needs. So we may work with a staff member and show how a therapy ball can be used for one particular child, or how deep pressure can be used for another. For those staff that are working with the really complex children, we do have the offer of a full 2-day training on sensory processing, so staff can really understand the reasons behind the children's behaviours. We've additionally incorporated parent training on the zones of regulation and on sensory processing, which has been really well received, and parents have said they feel quite empowered to support their children at home and to help them to learn what they need to do within different environments. So really our kind of top tips for success, as I've just mentioned, education is key. People really want to know the whys behind what they're doing, rather than just doing what they're told to be done. It really is a whole school approach, so you can walk down a corridor and there'll be a child walking along in a body sock, there'll be another maybe on a scooter board, there may be some students doing some wall pushes, and that's so common practice within the school, it's just seen as the norm. So that's really, really key to have that whole school approach. It's not just done in a few key classrooms. The OT team is based within the school. So having that presence, I think, has been really, really important. We're not just a service that goes in and just writes a programme and then goes back another hour in a later part of the academic year. So we're there, we have presence, we can be called upon, we can answer questions within the school day. And that also enables us to have regular monitoring and review of what we've recommended, to continue with our role in education on site for staff, and we have very open communication. Our office door is always available and open. Staff can come to us and say, can you show me what we were doing, or this isn't quite working, and parents are more than welcome to arrange meetings with us and have phone calls, and also communication with the wider community, with CAMS specialists or other or social workers that are working with the children, to really enable these key strategies to be used in other environments. So as a service, we still want to progress and grow. We acknowledge that so many of our children have sensory feeding issues. We have 2 trained SOS therapists, but we really see this as quite a big role that needs more hours within the school. Interoception is becoming a more widely known sense. There are curriculums and training that's now in place, and so we're kind of trialing integrating these curriculums within the school and doing specific taught sessions on interoception. We're always kind of on the lookout for new and emerging equipment. We've got quite good links with some of the reps, and we trial some equipment out for them, so that's always really useful to know about. And we are being asked by other schools to transfer this model of practice into their setting, and we've just started in another local secondary school for children with moderate learning disabilities and autism, so it's a growing service. Yes, so just thank you to the staff and management of the Vale Federation Schools and the PACE Centre.
There's a question in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to be an echo. I think it's because several of us have the microphones open. Stephanie, would you like to repeat your question?
Yeah. I think it's Aoife's microphone that might need to go off.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, you're talking sensory. It's definitely, yeah, it's no feedback now. You're talking sensory and I really can't cope with hearing my own voice back because it's my own sensory sensitivity that I have noticed since we've been using Teams more often. You kind of went on to answer it a little bit. I guess I was thinking about the toolkit, the toolbox in the classroom, and I was thinking, how do you prevent the children from then just choosing the one that they like the look of the most often? And you spoke about, you pulled together the profile and that you gave them visuals and helped them to be able to identify what area, what zone they might be in, and therefore what might help them, and then make a choice from that, which I think is brilliant. I think that's really good for encouraging independence. But I guess there will be some learners that just take a longer time to get there. And the practicalities of that box in the classroom, what is that like? Is that box introduced in your classes whereby you know the class are comfortable?
I think it's dependent on each class. So some classes are more the learners that have moderate learning disabilities, and we can have a much more open sensory toolbox for those students who will be able to kind of learn what tools they need. A teacher may say, do you want to go and choose something from the tactile box? In other classrooms, the toolboxes are much more in drawers, so it's not just an open free-for-all that students need, but we do have those requesting systems in place as well, so they can identify and tell us if they need to choose a sensory strategy.
And even then picking a strategy out, they may be the ones that try everything, but then that also informs their toolbox from just observing how they maybe respond to that strategy. And very quickly you'll see, even if they pick it up because they like the look of it, they may not actually like the texture of it or the weight, if it's a weighted blanket. So it also informs our observations as well.
Thank you then. We can move on to the next presentation. Rachel, would you like to share your screen?
Yes, I'm just aware that I think Roz has just put her hand up. I didn't know she had another question. I'm aware that Anthea has just got her hand up as well. I don't know if you want to do questions at the end or after.
Should we save questions to the end, just because otherwise we'll run out of time?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Please bear with me while I pull. Is that sharing that one? Can you see that one?
Yes.
Lovely. Okay, smashing. I can't see anybody now, so I will sort of hand on as we go. So a very different approach. This one, as I said, I'm Rachael Wilcox. I'm designated clinical officer from Valley CCG. So part of my role within this is the Sunflower Project is part of a needs-led neurodevelopmental approach and is part of what we call the bubble of support around children with autism. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the commissioning side and where this came from, and then Jo and Vicky, who are the experts in this, will tell you about how that's delivered. Okay, so where it all began, and a little bit about what we've been talking about within the main plenary session. It's very diagnosis focused. We heard about rising diagnosis requests for assessment, and we sort of spoke to our parent carer forums, we spoke to children and young people themselves, and one of the biggest noises that we heard was we sit on this diagnosis pathway forever, and we've still got these problems and we've got to live with them. So we, needs-led has always been the focus, but kind of, I think more recently we've had the structure and the funding behind it to support it. So St Helens had already started to develop some of this needs-led pathway approach, and we sort of borrowed some of their ideas, and Sunflower was one of those. We had rising waiting lists for occupational therapy, and they're still increasing. I'm not saying that they're perfect, but they're still increasing. And the demand was definitely growing around the request for sensory provision. And we wanted to look at a pathway that wasn't necessarily about over-medicalising sensory needs, because all children with autism, you know, we all have sensory sensitivities, we all have a level of sensory need, and that those need to be addressed. So we wanted to empower families, parents in understanding their children. We often were presented with families who were upset or confused about having had a private report and not understanding what to do with it or the information within it. So we wanted to normalise some of those behaviours to support the inclusion plan. So when I put NR, sorry, I couldn't fit non-recurring, but non-recurring money was used, which was 61,000 for 12 months to help develop the pathway and embed it into the system. The idea that it would reduce the waiting times for the current OT numbers and would then lead to sort of significant pathway change and sort of allow for development of an improved flow for children throughout the service, really. And for longer term, it's to kind of establish this within more recurrent funding. We are looking for recurrent funding. It probably won't be for the full 61,000, but we'll look to top that up with joint commissioning and joint commissioning occupational therapy across the longer term. And that's because it will impact in education, and we will be looking at an education workforce development model, which fits alongside the strategies that were mentioned this morning, earlier this afternoon, the autism strategy and the disability strategy as well. So in South Tees, they use this to backfill a band 6 and a band 3. In North Tees, it was done slightly differently, wasn't it, Vicky? But if people want more details on this, then we can talk to them about that later. And we chose to do the programme planning earlier so that they could start the programme earlier, and then that new staff could be used to develop other areas and think about sort of alternative areas of the pathway. So we do have more key performance indicators than this, but 2 of the key performance indicators that we're using as a CCG is we would expect 360 children and families through the pathway in 12 months, and that there are 260 other professionals, and that's professionals across education, health and care. Professionals are trained within those 12 months, and there's a set package that sits alongside both of those. And I'm going to hand over now to Jo and Vicky, who will talk to you about actually what is the Sunflower Project. So whoever's going next, and let me know with the traditional next slide, please, when you want to move on, ladies, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. So my name's Joanne Rountree. I'm the team lead for South Tees Occupational Therapy, and we've just started embedding the Sunflower Project. So it's still in its infancy. We're learning an awful lot, and we're able to make changes as we go through, which is really nice. So there's 2 elements to how we run the program. We run training for parents and also for professionals as well. So the parent training is around, again, as Rachel said, it's a needs-based program. So somewhere a professional will have hired.
So sorry to interrupt, you're really quiet. Can you be any closer to the microphone?
Sorry, I think I've got some technical difficulty. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. So the professional training, the parental training is around a needs-led basis. So somewhere that somebody would have identified that there's potentially sensory difficulties with a child or a young person. And so the programme is devised to be able to support the parents and help them understand their child and give them that time to be able to look at the child, look at the behaviours that they're seeing and try and understand them. And it's empowering the parents, so the greater they understand about their child and the difficulties they may be having, and the more strategies that they were able to give them, is then able to help them move forward and support their child at different points as they grow and transition. And we're finding this really, really useful. So we're also encouraging the parents to be able to look at the child holistically as well, and understand that there are so many other difficulties or other considerations, I guess. And some of those are absolutely around developmental. There together around preference. So some of those low level difficulties where the word sensory is being used to support the parents to be able to understand that actually these may be quite normal, quite typical, but equally on the other end of the scale where there are really significant difficulties, that the parent has that understanding to be able to support the child. The professional training is around, again, education for professionals to help understand why a child may be presenting the way that they are, and how that may be impacting on their journey, the learning, their availability to learn. I think we, from a professional point of view, we kind of get the impression that that parents feel that children go into school and actually at the point of going into school first thing on the morning that they should be ready because nothing's happened. But I think, as we've already heard, you know, there's lots of things that can impact on that child before they even get to school. So we're also trying to, I work in a mainstream setting, so we're trying to support, to look at what a learning environment may look like, because typically I think that's kind of sat on a hard chair and desk and you know, and sitting down and listening, whereas actually we need to encourage and support schools that we can support with that environment, so that it is very much an optimal environment for the children to be able to learn. But I think next slide, Rachel, please. Okay. So in order to access the service, the parent training is a referral basis only, and we will take that from any professional. As part of our clinical pathway, our service is undergoing a review, and so we typically have a referral form into occupational therapy, but then we also have a sunflower only referral form. But what we're trialling is, if a referral comes through to occupational therapy and actually the concerns are only around sensory difficulties, we're actually putting the children initially on the sunflower program, and that was around trying to increase the equity of accessing services for children that have those sensory difficulties. And then the education training, we are offering training for schools, but also for other professionals as well. The training slots are set dates and set times, and that was purely around helping the admin process, because what we found is there's an awful lot of admin support required to be able to help us deliver this programme. But we are very flexible. If there are a group of staff or you know, a specific school that actually we need to work outside of that, then we absolutely will work with them to be able to deliver that training. And I think, as it said on the slide there, this training is free to all professionals. So the aim is that actually we're helping the professionals understand when a referral would be required, so that children's needs are met, and just generally increase that understanding around these children and the difficulty. Sorry, next slide, please, Rachel.
Sorry.
Sorry. So this is just a little bit around what the process looks like. We possibly run it differently to our colleagues over in North Tees. We have had some challenges. This programme was set up during COVID, so we had quite a few challenges in terms of venues allowing us actually in, and having families mixing. But really what we felt is we've done quite a lot of tweaking to the programme since we've started. We run in 2 geographical areas, so we run in Middlesbrough and Redcar and Cleveland, and we've actually decided we've put 2 qualified therapists in the training, all of which have had some level of postgrad training in sensory education, and we felt that actually this was beneficial because the sessions for parents runs in 3 sessions, 3 consecutive weeks. Each session's around 2.5 hours. It's quite intense, it's quite a lot of talking. But in order for the families to really feel that they have our time, that they have our ear almost, some of these families may be coming into the training in replacement of an assessment. So we needed to make sure that their voice was heard and that they had time with us to be able to understand. As part of session 1, it's more around theory based, helping them to understand. We found this quite challenging because it's quite new to a lot of parents, and I think helping them to really understand why the child is behaving in that way is really helpful. So we have, probably like other services, we use the Winnie the Pooh characters to really help understand that, and we've got videos to go alongside that. And that gives the parent a visual, so they can really start to understand that actually, yes, this is how my child's presenting. So we found that really useful. Session 2 for the parents is much more around, we have case studies that we would present, and trying to help the parents understand how important it is for the child to be in that just right zone, and for them to be able to function in whatever they're required to do at that point, and that will change over time. Session 3 is the much more practical session. So this is looking at individual children and their profiles, looking at the clusters of difficulties that they're having, and devising strategies to be able to support them. So that's why we've gone with 2 therapists, to be able to make sure that we have enough time to be able to support these parents. Also the parents are given a workbook, and we added to this over time. I think just bits that we've kind of missed out, or we've kind of realised that actually that would be really helpful in supporting the parents. So we've added to that over time, and parents have found that really helpful. The professional training is currently, it's just a one-off. It's about an hour and a half long, so we've tried to pack as much as we can into that, but equally we've also put additional resources together for schools to be able to take away, and to be able to help understand a variety of children. Again, looking at different strategies, different pieces of equipment, but just to make sure that we have as much resources as possible, and that they're touched on through the training, so that it makes sense and they can come back to that really. Yes, I'm going to hand you over to Vicky, if that's okay.
Next slide.
Vicky, I'm really sorry, we don't have many minutes left.
No, I'll rush you. I'll rush you as quick as I possibly can.
I'm sorry,
everyone. No, it's fine. So the positives of it, and I think that the main positive we found is that the parents have felt empowered with the information to be able to support their child. And another real positive is the groups. Parents have made friendships with other parents within the groups, and the shared ideas and strategies that have worked, and where they can access equipment from, and the resources within the community. So they're the big main 2 positives really. The other ones is it's reinforced the importance of the professionals working together and really having that holistic approach to support the child. With the strategies and things that were put in place and the ideas, it's also helped build relationships with education, especially schools. We encourage in the sessions, if the child has got a one-to-one in their school, for that one-to-one to come along to the sessions as well, so they have the information with the same time as the parent, and they can then incorporate that back into the school setting. We've had some really good positives where parents have advised us that they felt it's been delivered, the level of information has been delivered at the right level. It hasn't been too high, and they've walked away really understanding what is going on with their child, and felt that they have the confidence to put in them strategies that we're asking them to do within the home setting. We've also had the feedback from parents as well that it's given them confidence to be able to stand up for the child as well, and be able to go to other services and say, I know what is sensory, what isn't sensory, and we can't leave this area because I know that other area that needs addressing is not related to sensory. So it's give them parents that confidence. And I think with the professionals training, it's allowed them to reflect a lot more about the children that they've got in their class or on their caseload, and think what they can do at that point before they refer on to other services as well. So there is lots of positives. The challenges, we have been trying to run this through COVID, which has been quite impossible because it is a group setting. So certainly at North Tees, we've had a big gap of delivering this, because it was just not, we weren't able to get the venues. We obviously couldn't meet in groups for quite a significant period of time. So we have had a good period of where this has not ran. But moving forwards, we're getting back onto it now, and we're getting the rooms, and hopefully tackling the waiting list that's built up over the COVID period. I know certainly at James Cook, when we got it at North Tees, this was a brand new service for us, and there was nothing like it at all. So we didn't inherit a waiting list as such. It was a waiting list that was built up by us going out and delivering information to the schools, to professionals about what this service could offer. So our referrals were zero to begin with, and then as we advised everybody in the community what it was about, the referrals built up over time. So we've obviously built a waiting list over COVID, but prior to that, we didn't have a waiting list to work from. One of the biggest challenges really with it is because it's run over 3 sessions, we do get a lot of parents that want to swap and change sessions. So we'll invite them to 3 sessions that will flow within a month period, for example, and they'll say, I can go to them 2 sessions, but I can't go to the 3rd one. And that sometimes disrupts the groups a little bit, and there's big gaps in between when they can attend the 3rd session. So that's been a bit of a challenge, and we've tried to be really strict around that and make sure when they do attend, they can do the 3 sessions that are being offered rather than chopping and changing out of groups. Next slide. So how we're measuring success. After each session, every parent's given a feedback form, and it's got rating scales on, and it's got boxes for them to give that feedback of how they feel the sessions went. We have got the KPIs to ensure we're meeting the numbers, and the professionals training as well is also via a feedback form directly into us. So we're getting lots of different feedback, and obviously trying to implement anything that we feel we can support from that feedback. Sorry, next slide, Rach. I'm going as quick as I can. So this was just some of the feedback that has been put onto the feedback forms for you to look at, really. Just that the training was fantastic. They really felt that they understand what their child is going through, and it's really sort of opened their eyes to what sensory integration is. We've had some parents that have actually attended the course and come out of it and said, you know, I don't think it is sensory. I've been told all along that my child has sensory difficulties, and what I've learned here has actually made me realise that my child hasn't, and I've gone completely down the wrong path. So it's also helped with them parents as well. And lots of them actually, after the first session, realised that, but want to stay for the 2nd and 3rd just to get that additional information. But all round, we've had some excellent feedback on it. And it's questions. Sorry, that was a real whistle-stop tour.
Well done. Well done.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I'll stop sharing because it's worse seeing yourself. There you go.
We have run over by a few minutes, and people have to get to their next workshop, unfortunately. I don't know, I saw in the first slides there were contact details. I don't know with the second group if you mind people contacting you if they've got questions still to ask.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. I'm not sure there's contact details on there, but what I'll do is I'll pop them in the chat.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much.
That's
and
fine.
Thank you to all the presenters and to everyone joining the workshop. So the next workshop starts at 3:50. So you've just got a few minutes to join onto that one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.